Welcome to episode 10 of Only for the Strong. Today's guest is a Jiu-Jitsu brown belt competitor and coach based at Tamanua Jiu-Jitsu in Queenstown, Pete Hodkinson, aka That Broccoli Guy. How are you, brother?
Good, bro. Good. My fields are ever verdant.
Yeah, for sure. So, with you, mate, what I wanted to do is just crack straight into this question. And that's essentially, in your opinion, why should someone learn and train Jiu-Jitsu?
Oh, man. There's so much in there.
Good, just solid points.
Look, the reasons why I started in the first place was, it was through a friend. Like, a friend hit me up, and he'd had a bit of a falling out with our friends group, but he was still... He'd gone back into training, and he was like, man, you should come along to training. And I went, well, what's jiu-jitsu? And he sent me this video, and I went, holy shit, yeah, I'm going to come and train jiu-jitsu. That looks awesome. So, I mean, first and foremost, for me, it was about fun. Like, I just saw something that was cool and wanted to go along and try it out. And then over the years, like, the benefits became more apparent. Like, if you're looking to develop more willpower, if you're looking to develop, you know, physical fitness, strength, mental resilience, all that kind of thing, like, that comes over time. And then a sense of community, belonging, family, hashtag family, all of that stuff becomes a huge deal. And especially if you're, you know, living a lifestyle or in a position where you're not getting that in other areas of your life, that I think that can be huge for people. When I left the country in 2017 and went over and trained in Germany, I actually hit up the coach of a club one town over from where I was living, and I wanted to get back into jiu-jitsu. I'd been a white belt for like 6 years. But I didn't have any friends over there, really. Like, I had friends of a partner and kind of a few loose connections, but where I was, I felt quite isolated. And so I emailed this coach and said, look, I've put on a bit of weight from the beer and the drinking and traveling in Germany, but I'm also looking for a friend circle of my own. And he emailed me back saying, oh, bro, like, if you've trained jiu-jitsu before, then you know the weight comes off. But if you're looking for family, then you've come to exactly the right place.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
He lived up to that. The whole club lived up to that. So why should you train? Like, everybody has their own reasons, but all of those things are potential things to come out of it.
Because what were you like as a child and as a teen, and did jits kind of shape your, I guess, adulthood as you got older?
That's an interesting question. Like, I started training at 17 years old. And I think I was probably quite inconsistent with my training until I was about 27, like until I went to Germany. I was very off and on. I'd stop and start and all that kind of thing. I hadn't really made the commitment to stick with it. And there were still benefits that came with that along the way, and I did reasonably well in little local competitions and stuff. But as an adult, like, since 27, it has absolutely shaped the way that I am and the way that I look at the world. I think I've become a lot calmer. Like, I was a pretty erratic mid-20-year-old, like, partying a lot, going out, engaging in all the quote-unquote wrong things. And over time, like, the love for the sport developed and deepened, and it became this calculation where I'd be like, okay, well, do I want to go out and party and do that, or do I want to show up to the gym tomorrow for myself and for my teammates and be ready to go, you know? And I just started choosing that more often. And so that, I think, leveled me out a lot. It's helped me to focus more. My coach, Vanderson, is really big on... Vanderson at Combat Room is very big on meditation. And over time, I noticed, you know, the more that you're able to concentrate and commit your focus to a given moment, the faster you'll learn things, because you'll notice the smaller details in a given technique or in an idea faster than somebody else that's kind of half listening and then, like, picking their nails and, oh, I've got something in my tooth and what am I going to have for dinner later? So that has also crossed out into other areas of my life, like being more present with friends and family. I think it's made me a better person in general, better partner, better son, better friend. Yeah.
Do you think when you went over to Germany, and you kind of touched on there was a family aspect or just a good culture, a dedicated and disciplined culture, do you think that was what sort of ended up giving you that incentive to commit to it full time sort of thing?
Yeah, I do. you know, like as a sport, it's cool. You know, the competitions are fun, but it's hard. Like those moments are like you got 6 minutes every month or every couple of weeks if you're competing super regularly. The stuff that is constant is the work in the gym, and if that stuff feels like family and that stuff feels excitement, you can enjoy that process, then it's much easier to stick with it. You know, if you're in it for the podium finish or all that, like that stuff is fleeting. I love the coaching aspect. I love the, connecting with people, the aha moment when you show somebody something and they get it for the first time and then you see them using it on somebody else. Like that kind of connective community aspect of the sport is what helped drive it forward. I mean, for me in Germany, to get like a bit more specific, I had the end of a relationship around the 23rd of December 2017, and my coach had seen me on the street like a few days beforehand, and he was like, "Man, you don't look so good. Like, are you okay?" And I was like, "No, honestly, like things are a bit up in the air at the moment." And he's like, "Man, if anything happens, like you call me, we'll figure it out." And he told me some of his story, which is a great yarn. He had been homeless for a huge period of time when he first moved to Germany from Brazil. And he basically said to me, "I don't want anybody to have to go through what I went through in a country so far away from home." And so when the relationship did end, he was the first person I called. I said, "Milton, you said to get in touch if things go haywire. Well, like, this is where we're at." And he goes, "Oh, Pete, I've lived in this film. Come to the gym." And so I like packed all of my stuff, which was like a crate of beers, a guitar and a backpack, into a taxi. And the taxi driver came up and down in the house and helped me pack the stuff and told me his story about how he'd left home and Turkey and all this stuff. And anyway, drives me to this gym 1 town away. I rock up to the gym. We emptied out a storage closet, and I lived in the gym. We put a mattress in the floor of the storage closet, and I lived there for 3 months. And it was over Christmas. And during that time, my teammates would come in over the Christmas period, like Christmas Day, and they'd bring me food and be like, "This, this was some stuff that we had left over from the family dinner. Here's some dessert that we had the next day." One of the coaches came in and he took me out to dinner in a Persian restaurant because everything else was closed, And that stuff really stuck with me. When I had nothing, my jiu-jitsu friends were there for me.
Sorry to interrupt you. You touched on just before about how you, as a person, have become more calm. And I think even just what you were saying then, you can obviously handle adversity a lot better now because of what you've been through. But do you think that development of just being more calm and handling adversity is from the physical exertion of training, or the confidence of being able to handle yourself, or just dealing with your emotions in training? Is it one of those in particular, or all of the above?
It's all of the above. All of the above, plus the commitment to being consistent with your training. The physical adversity stuff is huge. You're constantly putting yourself in stressful situations. When you've got a guy who's, higher rank than you, stronger than you, and he's crushing you. Sometimes all you can do is just like try and slow down, remember to breathe, and not panic. Like panicking is the worst thing you can do in jiu-jitsu and in life, right? Because if you panic, you start to get outside of the present moment and you lose touch with the problem that you're actually trying to solve because you're caught up in your own emotional state. So having the presence of mind and building that presence of mind over time, where you're repeatedly stuck inside control or stuck underneath somebody's mount, you slowly, it doesn't happen immediately, but you can remind yourself, okay, just breathe, might still have to tap, but at least I'll be a little bit calmer in the process. And then, if you've spent an hour's worth of rolling, fighting for your life, which as a white belt, when you first come in, like, that can be what it feels like. Then you go out back into your office job and somebody is late with a report, you're like, fuck, like, so? It's fine, the world doesn't stop, and you can transfer that, okay, just take a moment, just breathe, stay present. What actually needs to happen here? What are the steps I need to take to get out of this position, so to speak? So there's that. Consistency of training. Like, if you're consistent in showing up for training, showing up for yourself, what that does internally is sends your brain a message of, I made a commitment, I stuck to that commitment, therefore I can insert the next thing here, you know, and that builds up over time. And especially when training is hard. Like if you get to a position or a point where you're plateauing, you don't feel like you can go, biggest thing is just turn up. Even if you feel like you're having the worst day, just turn up. And then you get to leave knowing that you showed up. You know, that's the biggest thing, honestly.
Because I think with the general population, or just someone who's never trained jiu-jitsu, I feel like there's a misconception that in jiu-jitsu you rock up and you're a nice comfy geese, and then you kind of just have a chill wrestle with people, and it's all fun and everyone's happy. But I know, and anyone who's gone and trained a little bit of jiu-jitsu, people put it on you, and like oftentimes if you knew they're sensible, but like you said, an hour of rolling in the heat, in a gi or even just no gi, like it is intense. And I think the problem solving and the pressure handling you learn, you then go and take that into your day, and the problems in your day often seem a lot less detrimental and overwhelming.
100%. Especially when you're a white belt, you know, like it can be intimidating trying to step into the gym for the first time, but, you know, places like Te Manawa, places like the Combat Room, like most gyms, the white belts are treated like the most important people on the mat. Because if we can get you, the new guy, to stay and continue to develop and work on your skills, and we can build you up, then we get a new awesome training partner. You know, it's in our best interest to help you stay. That doesn't mean we won't just let you get away with shit. But like, we'll put it on in a way that allows you to work. And this is another interesting thing, actually. We have this thing where as you get better, you feel like you're doing worse against the higher belts. Well, it's because like they're slowly revealing more of the game to you, right? And they'll play and they'll let you kind of work and they'll do these things. And then once they notice you're starting to get the hang of it, they go, okay, well now here's the next level. So it can feel like you're stagnating. That's another thing that adds to the commitment of like, you just got to keep showing up, because the longer you stay, the bigger the game gets. The harder it seems, the more, not unlearnable, but the more impossible it seems that you'll ever like know jiu-jitsu. You know, I've been training off and on since 2007 in different forms of grappling, and there are times where I'm like, I don't know fucking jiu-jitsu, man. Like, I don't know, it's just too much. It's just too much. But that's the beauty of it, man. It doesn't end.
Cool. So some of those points segue really nicely into this next question. And that is that jiu-jitsu is a sport that has seemed to grow exponentially in the last 5 years or so, particularly in New Zealand from what I've seen. I actually remember when I think I was year 10 at high school, and I rocked up to a combat gym, and a guy there was taking jiu-jitsu classes, and he was actually relatively onto it, but there was no one there. Like, there was me and a mate from my boarding hostel, and that's it. And then now, it seems to be pumping, like I said, particularly in New Zealand. What do you think is the driving factor for this? And where do you see the sport going in the next few years?
Honestly, I think the UFC and Joe Rogan have been huge for the sport. You know, like, whether you like or lump that guy and that, like, sporting pursuit, it's brought grappling into the spotlight. People like Gordon Ryan as well, like, very polarizing figure in the sport, but it's undeniable that he's raised visibility of the sport. And I think the more that people are seeing that stuff, the more they're putting themselves in the shoes of those fighters and going, oh, maybe I could do that. And because of that, there's more clubs locally, there's more people, more word of mouth. Like, it's happening quite organically. But honestly, I was talking to Vanderson about, he would ask people as they came into the gym, how did you hear about us? How did you hear about jiu-jitsu? And the majority of the time, they would say, I was listening to this Joe Rogan podcast and he kept talking about it, and so I thought I'd come along and check it out, you know? Like, so regardless of what you think of those dudes, it's like they're doing massive wonders for the sport of jiu-jitsu, and that's a beautiful thing, I think. Yeah,
guys like Jocko and those sorts of people.
Jocko Willink as well, massive. And then like Lex Fridman, has had like John Danaher and some of those guys on the podcast as well. Gordon. Yeah.
So what's the dynamic like with new people coming into the gym? Because we're obviously a different day and age to 10, 20, 30 years ago in terms of things like physical contact, but then a sport like jiu-jitsu is in some ways probably what a lot of people need in this day and age. How do you find when new people coming in? Do a lot of people stay? Do a lot of people go? What's that often look like?
It's an interesting question. I think it depends on the gym and it depends on their goals, you know. I think it's really important as a coach when a student comes in that you ask, like, why do you want to get into it? You know? If somebody comes to me or to the combat room gym where I had my background, it's always like, well, what are you here for? And if they say, I want to fight MMA, then, okay, well then you might be better off in this other gym because that's not really like what we focus on. We do the jiu-jitsu stuff. Here as well, there isn't a huge focus on MMA, but I mean, we can help build up the no-gi jiu-jitsu in that direction. But it's like, it's important to know what they're looking for. And I think, you know, some coaches in some places don't necessarily ask those questions. They just want people through the door. And then over time, you end up with a misalignment of goals. Like, what is the person looking for? Well, do you actually know? Have you asked? And then if they're not getting it, they won't necessarily know how to ask for it, you know. So, like, it's about that structure. I think anybody that comes into the gym has the potential to stay for their entire lives or leave. And it's down to the individual.
From that is, if I'm a new person, I've never trained jiu-jitsu before, and I want to train jiu-jitsu, how do I find a gym that might be suitable for what I'm after?
Talk to the coaches. Like, just Google BJJ gyms in your area, like Google Maps even, like find the nearest gyms and send them an email. Say, I'd like to come in for a trial and sample, you know? Like, I think people will go to one gym and they think, oh, I've just got to stick in with this. Like, I would expect any student to sample every gym in the area, and then if the one that you think that's my vibe, like that's my guy, then that's where you go train, you know? Particularly in the early stages, you know, like the technical proficiency of gyms will become clearer over time, but the fundamentals are going to be the same pretty much everywhere. That as you learn and get better, you can go, oh, okay, I'm looking for something a bit more. I want a bit of a harder training room. I'll go and try out over here. But vibe first, man. Vibe first. It seems kind of trite, but like if you go in and you like the people that you're going to be training with, that's what keeps you showing up. Like, jiu-jitsu is cool. People are way cooler.
For sure. So what is it like being both a competitor and a coach? Is it difficult balancing the two, or do the roles complement each other?
Yes and no. Like, it's a mix. The difficulty is that training for competition needs to be selfish. You have to really focus on your own competitive intent. You have to train quite hard and push yourself, and you have to have people in the gym that you're putting it on, you know? Coaching people, particularly newer people, is the opposite, you know? So one of the hard things that I've had to learn, particularly in the last couple of years, is changing levels, you know? One day I'm focused on my own training and I'm doing hard rounds with the elite guys in the gym. And the next day I'm working with day one beginners, and you have to bring yourself back down and fight at their level, like allow them to play, be more playful and be selfless. Because as a coach, your job is help that person improve. As a competitor, your job is improve. You know, so there is a dynamic there that's difficult to balance. Now, the parts that I find complementary are in skill acquisition and study, because if you are teaching a technique, you have to be so much more aware of the minute details than if you're just training for yourself. If we're being picky, you have to be really aware of the details no matter what your goals are. But if you're explaining it to somebody, it forces you to be more technically accurate. And the more you do that, the more you become aware of it for yourself. I find that filming people rolling, studying people rolling, filming myself rolling is a great exercise across all of those levels, because you think you're doing something, but maybe you're not. Maybe you're not. And if you watch yourself, you go, oh, that was a white belt mistake, you know, like, so putting yourself in a position where you're coaching and you're forced to do that stuff all the time, I think that's fantastic for your own jiu-jitsu development. Yeah.
What about in a competition setting? Have you ever had a scenario where you've gone to a competition or a tournament and you've been competing and had people you were coaching as well, or you were their instructor at their gym?
No, well, being the full-time instructor, this is relatively new for me. Like, I've been coaching at Te Manawa for 3 weeks now, so just kind of gone into the full-time jiu-jitsu life. I have been at competitions where I've had teammates there, and I've been fighting and then running off to coach and corner for somebody, and then back. ADCC was a cool example, actually, over in Australia this last year. Myself, Jared Dell, Phil Alsop, Matt McMeeking, we were all there competing in our divisions. Hugo Murphy was also there. And we'd finish a match, and then we'd straight away be keeping an eye out for where our mates from New Zealand, we're not even teammates, we're just looking out for the bros and going, okay, duh. And if he doesn't have a corner man, then you just sit in the chair in your corner, So I've definitely had that dynamic where you've got to shift from, I'm getting myself ready, I'm doing my mental prep, and now I'm coaching this guy, I've got to be there for them. And I think it's easier when you're in a gym full time because you know people's game. You study them while they're rolling in the gym, and then when you see them in competition, you've got some context. Whereas, if I'm helping out in a pinch, cornering for Matt McMeeking or Stephen Booth, it's like, well, I know bits and pieces about their game from studying them and from rolling with them, but how much coaching, how much value can I really add in that coaching situation? It's a mix, learning to communicate with a person specific to their game is like, that's a whole other thing.
For sure. So combat sports, and in particular grappling, is undoubtedly one of the most physically demanding sports you can compete in and train in. What do you do to aid your recovery? What do you particularly think about your longevity in the sport? And just what do you do specifically to try and aid your recovery?
Just broccoli, bro.
Broccoli.
In the last couple of months, like over the Christmas period and my transition from north to south, like my strength and conditioning kind of went out the window. I was working a full-time job, and the shift between things, like something had to give, and the S&C was that. But I actually work with a guy called Stephen Pipe, who is an elite fight sport strength and conditioning coach, and I went to school with the guy. He's one of the bros. So when I started really getting serious about my competition, I went to him and said, hey man, can we do some work together? And he was happy to jump in. So he writes my programming remotely, and I'm going to get back into working with him this year. I think that's, if I was going to say, if somebody was to ask me what should I do to supplement my jiu-jitsu training, it would be lift weights twice a week. And if you do nothing else, that will help. Nutrition aside, that will help. People say, jiu-jitsu is the sport where strength doesn't matter. Bullshit. All other things being equal, you get two guys of high level skill, the stronger guy's going to win.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And also, you're going to be less prone to injuries if you're doing that work. You got to do the work properly. I mean, you'll know from your background, if you overexert a person and then throw them into a round, they're going to be likely to injure themselves because the stabilizing muscles aren't working properly. There's a lot of meathead approaches to strength and conditioning that don't transfer well to grappling, and we've got to be careful of that sort of thing. So finding the right kind of coaching for that stuff is really important.
Yeah.
What else do I do for recovery? Cold exposure and sauna are huge for me. I have a really tight relationship with our friends at the Cave Nutrition Store. Thomas has been really helpful in terms of working out what sort of stack I need to have. Creatine and beta-alanine are probably my two biggest. Protein I try to get from diet, but I also use a plant-based protein to fill the gaps if I need to. Plant-based because the whey-based stuff makes me gassy. It's literally just a physical comfort thing and not wanting to resort to biological warfare on that. But I'd say those are the main things. It's stretching also huge. So strength conditioning, stretching, cold exposure, heat exposure as hormetic stressors, diet, nutrition, and beta-alanine, creatine in my supplement stack. I also do supplementation of like testosterone support, which I'm experimenting with a little bit. I want to get some blood work done so I can actually get into the specifics. But for that, Tonkat Ali and Fidogia agrestis, having a bit of a play with. Basically trying to do anything that is not going on TRT.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because it's interesting. Basically how my business started is I was heavily into bodybuilding. I competed at an amateur level at that. And then I just got over that. And I ended up getting into kickboxing and also a bit of grappling. And I was going to other classes at Apex Gym and Freaks Jiu-Jitsu and all those boys there, you know? Yeah. And what literally happened is I was around those boys and I noticed the way they eat. And I was around the kickboxers and I again noticed the way they eat and train, and talking to them and being in that space for the first time, I understood that because of what I'd learned of bodybuilding, we were probably a lot more ahead on the nutrition and strength and conditioning side of things. And just applying that and getting into that industry, that's basically how my business originated. And since then, I've worked with like professional kickboxers, boxers, grappling athletes, and that's what I was going to segue into is with the nutrition side of things, even though you are quite in the know, do you feel the sport is still a little bit behind the times? I know in the UFC there's a few people that are like getting quite onto it, but
way behind the times.
Yeah, like I was going to ask you, even on comp day, do you actually have a nutrition sort of plan you implement, or do you just wing it? Like I know most people literally do. They'll have a burger the night before, take some, I don't know, junk with them on the day, and it's. But to me, I'm like, I know the physical demands of like grappling matches, and I just cannot fathom how some people wing it. Like even just to like not drop Stephen in it, but I always remember Stephen would like love having a massive session, and then he'd be like, I'm going to smash Burger, which is like a junk food burger basically, for like calories, and I'm like, there's no way that's going to digest like super well. Like there's a lot better ways to skin the cat, you know, but it's just interesting to me. I was going to ask you basically, like, do you have any structure to your food around comp time or big trainings or?
That fast food one is actually quite interesting. Like, Craig Jones, in the last year or so, I saw some stuff about him just like doing the in-and-out diet, like doing fast food stuff. But for him, he was trying to go from 88 kg to 99 kg as a weight bracket. And he worked with a fight dietitian to like take him up to that level. And there were days where he just had to get the calories in. And so that was how he did it, you know. And it worked for Craig. So, you know, I do think it's a mixed bag, and if you can get it from other sources, then 100%. But, yeah, I've looked at some stuff which is, you know, getting carbs in, and people are eating, like, white breads and jelly lollies and stuff like that to try and get the right sort of sugars. And obviously there's windows of time where that can be appropriate. But, yeah, broadly, I think you're right. Like, the sport is behind the times. I think people like the fight dietitian. The guy that I went to for a bunch of advice, and I found him fantastic, was a dude called Charles Allen Price. He is Owen O'Flanagan and Hodger Gracie's strength and conditioning coach and dietitian. And he also speaks very highly of the fight dietitian. And he's got an online course now for grappling athletes. And I found that stuff really helpful. I think a lot of people are they just haven't had access to the information, you know? They don't know anything, like even the basics of like, get 2 grams of protein per kg of body weight, or like some people use height metrics and stuff like that. But if you're not getting the protein in to start looking at growth, like the strength training isn't going to really work because you're just going to be burning yourself to the ground. In terms of getting the carbs, balance between fats and carbs, a lot of different schools of thought. I just, you know, when I was talking to Charles, he said, look, for you, concentrate on the protein. You get the protein in. I don't care what you do with the rest. Find a balance that works for you. If you want to get the carbs from salads and, you know, have some jelly lollies after training. But he really encouraged calorie counting. And I've had a lot of success with that in the past. Like I went from 86 to like 77 kgs in over 2 or 3 months, which was a good slow build down to it. And that was just through finding what my resting metabolic rate was and calorie intake, and then going, okay, well, let's go lower than that. And but if you're trying to build muscle at the same time as trying to drop fat, that's when you've got to like watch that, because you don't want to skimp out on your protein intake. You got to keep that up and then drop carbs and stuff. I mean, you know the stuff, but that's the kind of stuff that I think a lot of people don't think about. They go, oh, I need a calorie deficit, and they'll start eating less protein, and then they'll wonder why they're fucking tired all the time, or they'll drop too much because they haven't done the measure and check, you know? Spend a couple of weeks or 3 weeks just going, okay, I'm going to eat 2,500 calories a day, and then watch my weight, weigh myself every morning. Is my weight going up? Well, then I'm eating too much. Is it going down? I'm not eating enough. Is it stable? Okay, that's probably close to the right thing. And then you can adjust, you know. But so many people just don't bother to do the math. They'll just try and roughly eat less, or like wing it, as you say. And I think that's dangerous.
Have you found it difficult, because I see this a lot of combat athletes, so it's really just for my own interest, but your energy output is so high, like you cannot compare an hour and a half of rolling, like intense rolling, prepping for a match, to like a standard hypertrophy workout. Because everyone likes to throw around, oh, I burnt 500 calories in my workout, but I know, and you probably know, when you go and roll intensely for a long duration of time, the output is so high, it's often a real challenge to get in the food to make that up, let alone put on any weight if that's what you're trying to do. Have you found it hard to sometimes just eat sufficiently to fuel your output?
No, I honestly, I haven't had huge trouble with that. It was an adjustment trying to get the right amount of protein, because all of a sudden I was like, okay, well, I need to snack on like a tin of tuna, a couple of eggs, egg white omelets, like have steak just fried up and cut up in the fridge ready to go. It was an adjustment, but it wasn't difficult to get the calories in. I think because of my, body type, my metabolism, I have more trouble dropping weight than I have gaining weight. Like, I actually find that pretty easy. I've definitely met people who are like lean, super lean, and then I talk to them and they're doing weight training 2 times a week and then rolling all the time, and I'm like, okay, well, how much protein are you eating? And they're like, oh, well, I eat this and I eat this and I eat this, and I'm like, no, give me numbers, man. Like, don't chance it. Like, how much protein are you getting? How much do you weigh? Let's do the math, because you're telling me you're exhausted, so something isn't right. Like, you shouldn't be exhausted all the time. That's a sign that your body isn't getting enough fuel. So I think some people struggle with it more, for sure. Did I find it difficult to get enough calories in? Not necessarily. I know the work rate is really high, though. A couple of times I've actually put like a heart rate monitor on during the course of like a free roll session after training, and some of the numbers are pretty surprisingly high. Like, you can really send yourself through the roof. That's the other thing that makes it quite difficult to plan for, is like, how do you know, how intensely are you rolling?
And that's why I think consistency of your training schedule and your nutrition, because when you wing it, and this is the thing, is a lot of people throw numbers around about what they're doing, but really, unless you're consistent, you don't know. And it's kind of simple as that. But switching gears here, I just wanted to get a little bit more serious, if that's okay. Sure. If you are to have children in the future, will you disown them if they don't like broccoli?
I don't know what you're talking about now.
Boom. So, because where did the broccoli thing originate from? Do you just really like broccoli?
I do. I do really like broccoli. No, I wouldn't disown them. They might find, if I have a couple of kids, they may end up finding that the one that doesn't like broccoli ends up receiving proportionately less in the will. But, I mean, they'll know what they did. It's up to them. You can lead a horse to broccoli, but you can't make it be awesome. So that's just it's one of the facts of life.
I've got to commend you for like eating it raw, because one time when I was like prepping for a bodybuilding comp, the power went out and I couldn't cook my broccoli. So I was like, at the time I just didn't think anything of it. I'll just eat it raw, and I'm going to be honest, I like it way better cooked.
That's fair enough, man. Some people actually argue that cooking it is better, like physically better for you as well, because if you boil it, it can make it a little bit less harsh on the stomach. Some people find you get like worse gas if it's not at least steamed. And I think that partly has to do with like the response of the broccoli. There's something to do with like plant defense mechanisms that make it more or less toxic. I'm not a scientist, all right? Like, I'm not an expert. There's probably... Rhonda Patrick would probably listen to me talking and be like, this guy needs to fucking, like... Just stick to the jokes, bro. Just stick to the jokes. Yeah. How did it start? I was training in Germany. I spent 3 years living over there doing music, which is my kind of other key passion, working in a language school, teaching English and German, and training jiu-jitsu. And... some of the guys would go hard, like that. That was a really hard training room. Honestly, probably a room that's more focused on the advanced players. But the advanced players in that gym are some of the best in Europe. They're winning like podium finishes at Europeans. One of them, a guy called Rene, I think he'll be one to watch out for if he, goes in for ADCC 2024. But yeah, really tough guys. Point being, like, we would often train quite late. Like, we might go in at 6 p.m. and we'd still be there at 11:30, drilling, getting hard rolls in, whatever it might be. And this one particular evening, I had done like a vegetable shop during the early afternoon because I think today's going to go late. We finished training and I was fucked. Like, I was so hungry. And it was like 11:30 at night, so everything was closed in the area. I couldn't get any takeout or anything like that. So I opened up my bag, and I'm drenched in sweat, and I saw like this head of broccoli in the top of the bag, and I went, fuck it, like I'm just going to eat it. And I did eat raw broccoli ordinarily anyway, like I have since I was a kid. My mum's got some crack-up stories about like giving me raw vegetables and my godmother seeing it and going, oh my God, how dare you be so lazy as not to cook your child's food. Like frozen peas, I would eat straight out of the bag, frozen, and loved it. Everywhere I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, and he's like, no, that's the only way he eats it. He likes it.
Yeah.
So I pull this broccoli out of my bag and just start chowing down on it. And my training partners look at me like I'm absolutely batshit insane. Like, hey, Pete, what are you doing? Just eating a broccoli, bro. Yeah. Like, they thought it was some crazy Kiwi power move. Like, I was like, trying to psych them out, you know? Like, fuck you guys. Like, but they found it super weird, and the weirder they found it, the funnier I found it. And honestly, man, I'm a pretty silly guy, so if you give me an opportunity to find something funny, like, I'm doubling down. And so every couple of days I would just bring a broccoli into training and I'd be chewing down in the locker room, get the rolled eyes, the shaking heads, and I'm like, delicious, delicious. I live for that stupid humor, you know? And then we went to a tournament in the Netherlands. We went to King of the Beach. And on the way out there, one of the guys, we stopped by at the supermarket. People were loading up on, carb gels for after the tournament and getting the right stuff to cook. And one of the guys jokingly was like, hey, Pete, are you going to get a broccoli? It's like, fuck yeah, I'm getting a broccoli. Like, I had to, I'd committed to it already. Yeah. So I grabbed like 2 or 3 broccolis, and after the tournament, like, I'm walking around eating a broccoli, and people are like, fucking who is this guy? And then we got stuck in traffic, and like and I mean a traffic jam between the Netherlands and Germany, and it was so deadlocked that people were literally just getting out of their cars and walking around. And so we got out of the cars and started doing some grip fighting, put on our gis and started wrestling on the motorway between Netherlands and Germany. So I get out of the car and start filming an Instagram story where I'm like, a lot of people have asked me, what do you do when you're stuck between countries in Europe and you're in a traffic jam? Well, the answer is to exit the vehicle and consume broccoli. And I pull a broccoli into shot and start eating it. Everybody's losing their shit. It was crack up, right? What I didn't think about was the fact that this is on the internet now, right? So it was an in-joke for me and my training partners in Germany. But then I get back to New Zealand, and one of my trading partners is like, hey, bro, what was up with all that broccoli stuff? I was like, oh, yeah. You guys would have seen that too.
Intently how people watch your stuff sometimes, you know?
Exactly, you know, and I was just like, oh, fuck, you know, nobody's going to care about this stuff. And all of a sudden, like, everybody's asking, like, bro, what was with the broccoli? What was with the broccoli? So I doubled down again and started doing little stories where I'm talking about, you know, like, how do you survive 40 minutes worth of guard drills without having your guard pass? And I'm like, broccoli, just started eating broccoli. Doing broccoli puns, like I'm up against the window, stuck between a brock and a hard place, like, real dumb shit, man. Like, we're talking real low-level humor. I'd do like unboxings when I'd order vegetables from a farm and take the broccoli out. And then people started like reacting to my posts and stuff with the broccoli emoji.
Right.
So I started using the broccoli emoji to sign off. And people are picking up on it. And then all of a sudden I'm getting sent broccoli recipes from around the world. Anytime somebody sees broccoli content, it comes straight to me. People are in the supermarket. I've got friends that take photos of the price of broccoli and send it to me. Like, they'll be chopping up their dinner, making broccoli, frying broccoli. They send me pictures of them cooking broccoli. Like, anytime somebody sees a broccoli, they think of me. And so I've ended up living rent-free in people's mind whenever they see a broccoli. And it's like, it's so stupid, but it's actually been a really interesting little marketing quirk, and people remember the broccoli guy. When I registered for Pursuit Invitational, I sent the email out to Mark, and I hadn't met Mark, who ran that tournament before. And I was like, oh, if you're still looking for people, I'd be curious. Like, just let me know what I would need to send in and stuff. My name's Pete, blah, 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 blah. And he emails me back with one line, yes, Mr. Broccoli, we'd love to have you. And that was the point where I was like, holy shit, okay, so I'm really, like, people know me more for broccoli than just about anything else. Like, one of my friends actually bought me a pair of broccoli socks. He brought them to training. So I guess next step for me is probably doing some stupid merch. But I'm really like, oh, do I really want to go that far down the rabbit hole? And the answer is yeah.
Or you could do like a broccoli OnlyFans, you know, with like, I don't know, half saucy jiu-jitsu pics with like broccoli, I don't know.
Bro, you're not even that far off. So I actually like had some designs mocked up by one of my own old training partners, this girl Danny. I told her about this idea, like sort of joking around. You know the Craig Jones OnlyFans rash guard? So she actually designed up a version of that rash guard where instead of blue, it was green. Instead of the little OnlyFans padlocks, it was little broccoli images and circles down the arms. And it said, subscribe to me on OnlyFarms. And honestly, like, I've got these designs sitting to one side. I contacted MA1 Combat, who manufacture the Craig Jones ones, and was like, so, like, could you guys make this for me? Do you do custom prints? And they came back with an email like, are you serious, bro? Like, are you serious about making this? And I was like, yeah, I kind of explained it, and they sent me an email back like, oh, sorry, bro, we thought it was just a rip-off of the Craig Jones one in green. I didn't look close enough at the design. Yeah, we could do this for you. Like, this is how much it would cost. So, like, just in the back of my mind, like, I've got that. You're not crazy, but you're not far off the mark as to what I was planning.
So
coincidentally, if there are listeners to this podcast that would be interested in an OnlyFarms rash guard, let me know. Get in touch with me on Instagram, and like I might just do it.
Lastly, I've got some quick fire questions we're just going to rattle through.
All right.
So what would your last meal on death row be? A main and a dessert?
Ooh, probably butter chicken and tiramisu. I know, like, butter chicken is like the basic bitch of curries, but I fucking love it, man. I love a good Indian curry. Yeah. Curry and tiramisu.
I've got here one song to train to for the rest of your life, but I'll put one song to walk out to for the rest of your life.
Prince Ali from Aladdin.
Nice. In your opinion, across any sport or even just jiu-jitsu, the greatest athlete of all time?
Greatest athlete of all time in jiu-jitsu, I think, is probably Gordon Ryan. I think there's a lot of underrated people. I think there's plenty of people over in Brazil, for instance, that don't have the finances to be able to actually follow the sport through and take it all the way. I think Gordon takes it. There's other people that I like more as a person and as an athlete, but numbers don't lie.
Favorite movie of all time?
Probably Aladdin, bro. Yeah,
Nice.
either that
Cool.
or there's a movie by a director called Richard Linklater called Waking Life, which is incredible. Like, that was mind-blowing for me. Or the movie that I've watched the most number of times is Almost Famous. And I once watched that movie 5 times back to back to back to back to back and was still awake at 5:30 in the morning watching it. I have no idea
Really?
why, but I love that film.
Yeah,
That was the song
nice.
that introduced me to the Elton John song Tiny Dancer.
Right.
And I heard the song, and after the 3rd time through, I was like, fuck, I love this song. And I was a big metalhead at the time, like. So I look up in the credits, like, who the song was by, and I'm like, Elton John? I like Elton John? Holy shit. Like, that was a shift.
Mind-blowing.
But yeah.
Your biggest inspiration?
Ooh. Probably my parents.
Nice. And then lastly, one piece of advice you would give your 10-year-old self?
There's probably more pieces of advice that I'd give to my 20-year-old self, to be honest. My 10-year-old self.
Even 20, if you want to go 20, that's fine.
Listen more. Listen more, talk less.
Yeah.
My 10-year-old self, honestly, I would probably just say hang in there, man. It'll turn around. For context, like when I was in my early teen years, I developed body hair faster than everybody else. I had lost my hair by the time I was 16 years old.
Really?
I had acne really badly in my early teen years. And there were times where I was like quite chubby as well. Like I would fill out and then grow. But honestly, like I had a lot of things going on that were like a recipe for not social awkwardness. I don't think I was necessarily awkward. But embarrassment, shame. So I'd just say, bro, like, it comes out in the wash. Just fucking hang in there and have fun as long as you can.
Main. Before we wrap up, is there anyone you would like to plug or thank?
Oh, plenty of people. Thomas at The Cave has been awesome. If anybody's looking for supplementation and stuff like that, whether it's purchasing or advice, I would contact him for sure. All of my coaches over all of the years that I've been training, my first ever coach, Ben Ray, when I was training traditional jiu-jitsu back in 2007, Christian Bowser's one of my closest friends in the sport at the time and through to this day. Vanderson Perez, who I started my journey with, and he will always be my coach. My belts will always sit with him no matter where I go from this point forward. Milton Ferreira at Kamikaze BJJ and Bernd at Kamikaze BJJ, my coaches over there, all of my training partners, they've been incredible. And now Brent and Paula here at Tamanawa BJJ, I'm learning heaps while I'm teaching, and they've given me an amazing opportunity. You know, I'm just trying to use that for all it's worth. My parents, I wouldn't be able to do any of the stuff that I'm doing now if I hadn't had their love and support as constantly as I have. My partner Liana, love you to bits. That's probably it for now, yeah.
Nice. For anyone listening, make sure you go and follow Pete on Instagram at GentleArtsNZ. But bro, thank you so much for jumping on today. I appreciate your time, and I'll be continuing to follow your journey. And I just wish you all the best going forward, and we'll have to get you back on at some stage in the future.
Would love to. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for watching. If you like this content, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And for all things Unbroken Performance and myself, hit the links in the description below.